Welcome to PolyCast, a civilization podcast focused on game strategy.
Dan Q.
Makalua.
The Me and Team.
Mad Jin.
Oh, well, when Mackie creates those images and sends them to me, I'll use them then.
And we just show a picture of Mackie slurping.
Do what? What?
Exactly.
My headphones on and all I hear is something about me and pictures and I'm going, what? Welcome to episode 219. I'm still Makalua. Joining me as usual, Dan Q.
I'm still Dan.
Mad Jen.
Today I shall be Warren.
And the Me Team.
Happy New Empires, everyone. You can do the Beyond Earth Civilopedia on the World Wide Web, civilopedia.info/civilopediabe. So you can look at it while, eating lunch at work, assuming you have an internet connection and your place allows it. You can look up stuff like virtues and read about them.
Yeah, it's in the same style of format as they did for Civilization 5. So you got the Civilopedia side of the game. And I know Apolta has the tech web on their website, but this is more comprehensive. This is more than just the tech web. So that was nice to see. I was wondering if they were going to actually do that.
It probably took a little while to put it together.
Probably did, yes.
It looks very useful. If you don't have access to, looking it up in the game, it might be faster than in the game. Who knows?
Well, yeah, if you just want to look up something quickly rather than, all right, turn on Steam, launch your game, wait for the game to load.
I mean, you don't keep Steam on at all times?
What?
What? Oh man, we're starting the new year with a bang. We got the FXX Mr. Kevin. I can pronounce it, although with difficulty, because I can't read basic English letters. So this is the Beyond Earth Fall update. It is now live, is the title of the thread. But of course, this happened back in December. Trade routes got nerfed. Everyone loves the nerfed trade routes. Deity, or should I say Apollo AI, got buffed a fair amount. It now resembles some of the Deity AIs from past games, but not all of them. Right. And there's quite a few balance tweaks. They tried to incentivize health a little bit more by making it a little bit more penalizing to go unhealthy, but you can still do that, of course.
Didn't we already talk about a lot of this?
Yeah. It feels familiar, but I don't know which we did on the air versus not.
There were some things that we discussed because there were some things that were disclosed that were upcoming in the patch.
Oh, that's right.
But then there were some things that were not.
We never actually talked about the patch.
Okay. You know, I do kind of like that the trade routes are not stronger on water, because that was a lot of micro. I still think trade routes need a lot of help with micro.
And then they reversed the trade route formula. They said it was revised, but they actually reversed it. So sending a trade route out to somebody, your opponent, always gives your opponent far more yields than if you were getting it. It makes no sense. I want to trade with you. Here, have 2 to 3 times the amount of yields out of this route that I had to make effort to make and send and protect.
That does seem strange, because I don't feel like you needed more incentive for internal trade routes versus external trade routes than you had in the previous patch when the yields are just disgusting in terms of food and hammers. Mm-hmm. But, now it's probably even worse unless you have a mutual trade agreement with somebody and talking the AI into that. But with a person, maybe.
You can get trade agreements and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, okay, really AI, you and I, we're allies. Don't trade with anyone else. We're just going to boost each other's tech up. And
you mean that sort of thing?
Yeah. That's one way to get around the uneven trade route stuff when it comes to foreign trade, but there's no way you're going to be able to make diplomatic arrangements like that with the AI or other just BS collusion.
Yes,
I'll give you a favor. Go beat on that guy. I mean, yes, you can use the AI for that, but that's not really what I'm thinking about here.
Yep. There's some cheesiness with respect to internal trade routes. Haha. The amusing drop a city in the middle of a bunch of snow and just let everybody send trade routes to it to get maximum internal yields.
Yeah.
It's awesome, because it's all based on differential between the two. And if you get one of your cities has 0, then automatically the other one gets lots. So in other words, expect another patch for trade routes.
They're still good, by the way. You still want to use them a lot.
Yes, now if only we can get rid of some of the micro.
Yes, that's probably the worst part of it.
I mean, it does help that now that the user interface will show you your most previous trade route for that particular trade unit once it comes to the end, that's now superimposed and at the top. That's nice to see.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. And not getting a third trade route from robotics and building those, what are they called, the auto planes or whatever.
Yep. Well, that was just a bad design.
That just added another layer because, you saw that and you know how strong they are. So of course you get more trade routes then, and you make your.
Yeah. But even still, 2 trade routes per city, big empire, end a game. That's a lot of trade routes that are just popping up constantly and annoying you.
Oh, some of the factions got buffed and nerfed. Well, Africa got buffed. Yeah.
And then some.
Yeah, not so much on the Slavic Federation.
No longer get a free tech when they first launch an orbital unit. So that got traded out, but now they get the 50% longer orbital units and 50% more petroleum, so you can have more orbital units. This patch had a lot of anti-exploit and anti-just bad choices sort of changes, like aristocrats and artists now for their the colonist side now no longer give health bonuses.
Yeah.
So none of the colonists give a health choice, finally.
Which, for me, doesn't change my opinion on the colonist choices at all.
Well, 4 energy per city is directly equal to 2 production per city. So at least on that for the aristocrats, because all energy costs are pretty much double the production costs generally through the game. So that's at least there. 3 culture per city. Some people are actually saying it's a little too high for Beyond Earth, because culture and the virtues and all that is very powerful. I guess it sort of depends on total yield and where you can get your yields and everything else, but it could probably do with an adjustment back down to 2, but...
I disagree. There's no way I've picked Africa in that every single game that we've played recently. Nope.
Well, starting with an old Earth relic in every city.
And stacking it with that, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of silliness in there.
Phil, did you find some exploit we need to know about?
Yeah, I'm thinking there's just too many civs now that all are culture-based.
That's probably because it's a little good in general, but you would have to kind of shift some of that goodness, otherwise the game just gets really slow.
Yeah.
And seeing as how we've been talking about culture and health related to the colonists as a no longer health bonus, the Tier 3 prosperity virtue now provides minus 15% less on health as opposed to minus 25%. That was a good change, even though
It was always a go-to. Hey, look, I just lost 50 on health.
Let me make this clear. This was a good change for a balance. Not a good change for necessarily my state of mind, because, as you said, it was always a go-to. I'm used to it now, but I'll remember the early days.
And, of course, learning centers got nerfed for some reason. I don't know why. Now most of the virtues for the manufactories and the academies and other stuff like that, they're a waste of culture. If you're only going to give +1 to something that's supposed to be a special building that already costs a bunch of stuff, and then the base is also pretty much garbage compared to other improvements, then you've effectively nerfed it out of the game. Both academies and manufactories are totally useless.
It's interesting to hear you say that. Like, people are still talking about Academy spam on the forum, but when I was playing, I never seemed to do it. I looked at it and it just never seemed that good lately. So,
well, it's been so hard nerfed that you can use the arrays instead and just get the techs for those that give their boosts, and they're cheaper because you don't pay for them.
In the case of the manufacturer, weren't they, and still are they not, providing an unhealthiness
that too
issue? So it was just kind of like, is that really worth, especially when you compare it to something else that you can get without that?
Yep.
With the arrays, like Matt was saying.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like, it's like 1 step ahead, 2 steps behind. So this patch did not change my view of manufacturers and academies, because now I continue to ignore them almost always.
Yep. I mean, manufacturers are fine for cities that have no hills in the neighborhood, and you can't mine it.
Trade routes.
You can slap down some production for that. That's fine.
It's true. And then I would question, why would you have a city like that in the first place? More often than not.
Space taking. It works. There could also be lots of resources around it. So, there's lots of reasons to have a city like that. But, I mean, realistically, you just terraform, start slapping down the strategics all over the place. One of the few times in a Civ series that production is actually harder to get than anything else. Because hills don't get an upgrade. Basic mines, you get 2. A sheer lack of production in the game, except for trade routes. It's kind of weird the way they actually chose to design that based around what yields are stronger than others.
Well, production was a little weaker in terms of raw values and so far, too, actually.
But like,
you had things that upgraded it in the late game that could cause you to just be ridiculous.
But you don't have that in this game.
Nope.
The health effects balancing.
It's nice that they brought back the scaling, but there's still plenty of ways to mess with the scaling. Because you get bonuses that give you plus 10%, plus 20% stacked, and that counteracts the health stuff, which obviously kind of defeats the purpose. Like for outpost growth, it's penalized 2% per point up to minus 100%. So you would think at minus 100%, at negative 50 health, that your outpost would never grow. Same for city growth, that they would never grow. But if you start adding plus growth or plus outpost growth virtues, that actually means that you can go even further negative before you actually stop growing. That just annoys me just for how that's implemented. I would prefer these to be like a multiplicative at the end of it. So it doesn't matter how many bonuses you have. If you hit negative 50 health, your city stopped growing, period. No way around it.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe they just want it so you can set it up and tank all the penalties and keep going.
You used to be able to ignore all the penalties. At least the nice thing is it's progressive now. It goes further away from zero. And on the positive health, there used to be like almost no reason to go positive.
It does seem kind of unusual to me that, science being penalized minus 1% per point up to minus 50%. That occurs at minus 10 to minus 60.
Yeah.
As opposed to, say, what happens in Civilization 5 in terms of production penalty, for example, combat penalty as well. I was kind of surprised that we didn't actually see a combat penalty hit anywhere here on the negative.
Those are no fun.
Like, the range of things, too, is kind of weird as well.
You didn't get a science penalty before either.
No, I know that. But the range of some of these things is also unusual. Like, if you go up in terms of health or down in terms of unhealth, like, for example, you get from minus 20 to minus 70, thinking about the production, there's the production penalty. And then the production bonus goes from 5 to 25. Now, I realize you wouldn't necessarily want to be able to say that, hey, if you got yourself up to whatever, that you could be up production 50%, although based on what's already been said about production in this game, maybe you would. Maybe that would be a reason to actually pay more attention to health. Like, I just don't understand the proportions here.
Well, I mean, shifting it to start at negative 20 versus starting it at 0 just means that you can get some negatives going, but you still have the ability to try and, get your way out of it before you get too unhealthy. But then once you start getting down there, like once you really get unhealthy, then, well, you're screwed. Too bad. Notice energy is not affected here at all. So,
what was this? You were talking about this being an energy-based game?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't need production. You don't need science. You don't need culture. Just get energy. Well, okay, maybe you need science and culture, but...
I was going to say, I don't think you can buy techs.
I want to buy techs.
You can buy the removal of your enemy's ability to attain them, though.
Yep.
Assuming your current tech is good enough.
Well, you could air quote buy technologies through covert ops.
True. Can use lots of covert ops.
And I also enjoy that from the health effects balancing, from 1 to 5, nothing happens.
You get nothing.
You get nothing just for starting the game. Because you always start in that range when you start the game. So it would be weird if Kate started with...
We're not
I agree. It's just, this is kind of like...
We would like you to make actual effort before we start giving you stuff or taking away stuff.
Although I wouldn't mind 0 to negative 5. Also, nothing happens.
Oh, yeah. That would be.
The wording there is interesting because from 0 to negative 50, like, you get penalized stuff on a per point basis.
Yeah.
It's like 0, huh? Okay.
Should be negative 1, probably.
Yeah.
And 0 to 5. Yeah. It's a little off.
This is similar to how I get a percentage-based raise every year for doing this show.
Yeah.
Divide by 0.
Yeah, other silly things that did get fixed. Purity level 1 is no longer goofy. Power, ignore, everything, explore units.
Aww.
Yay! But it does double the combat strength when defending. Useful against small aliens, but completely useless against big aliens. Especially because explorers now have 6 combat strength.
Yep.
It was 3, so, they're at 6, and if they're purity, that means 12. And that means they can stand up to a hit from most things, actually. Most of the aliens they can stand up to. You'd still want to stay away from raptor bugs and, the actual powerful stuff, like worms. You'll be able to defend against them. Not attack, but defend. But on top of that, the Harmony level 1 bonus, which was dumb, got converted to granting miasma immunity to the Explorer unit. Yay! Now all 3 level 1 bonuses are Explorer-based.
Actual bonuses?
for explorers. It's crazy. Miasma immunity versus combat strength versus an extra one. That actually all seems slightly more balanced. Although
Imagine can stop losing all of his explorers to miasma.
Yeah, that too. And it also gives you a reason to get all three.
Yes.
Because you can get all 3 level 1s pretty quick.
Yeah, to get all 3 level, yeah. As opposed to going meh.
Yeah. I don't want that.
Speaking about affinities in the patch, it made it a little bit difficult, or more difficult to rush them out because of the quests. I saw a lot of complaints about that, actually.
All the affinity type quests are now given within 1 turn of each other. Burp. The game waits until it's possible. And then somebody found out that most of the AIs basically ignore most of the quests. Because there's a little line in there saying, AI ignore, AI ignore, AI ignore. And you know what happens? After turn 100, no one gets an infinity quest anymore. Because the AI is ignoring them. Basically, yeah. Expect another patch.
Yeah. We started with a good idea, but then it kind of didn't work out in practice.
I think that the person who found it had found it before this patch came out and was like confused as to why they would ignore it. But we were still getting all the quests, so it's like, oh, well, the AI just doesn't get these quests for some reason. But now that the AI has to be able to get the quest, having that line in there kind of screws the whole thing up.
Speaking of AI, Warmonger threat per city acquisition is now capped. Warmonger calculation now scaled down when cities are taken by sponsors that are reacting to a war that was declared upon them. Oh, gee, thanks.
Can we have that in regular Civ?
Mackie, are you saying Beyond Earth is irregular Civ then?
Irregular.
Oh, you see what I did there.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't.
Although, actually, my favorite entry under AI was once the game is in extended mode, that's after the player clicks the one more turn button, the AI will now only pursue domination.
Yeah.
Kind of not a point with your gates. Yep, those are cute.
I was just like, so the AI doesn't bother with domination until after you've won?
I also like that we now have a term for what happens when you go click on the one more turn button. What are you playing now? It's now extended mode. Extended mode. Developer Firaxis Game says so.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Warmonger calculation does have to not be the same as per Civ because BE requires a lot more cities than Civ. And if you kept the same Warmonger scaling, yeah.
Well, everyone would hate everyone.
Yeah, and that would basically break everything. I mean, not that you use the diplomacy system anyways, but...
Oh, that again.
What? You mean you don't abuse favor trades for infinite money in the previous patch? No? Okay. No. I don't use exploits, listeners. I swear.
No, I just ignore them. AIs, what are those? Oh, whatever. Never mind. Of course, all the units got rescaled, especially the big old battle suits. But then again, people started complaining. Oh, they're so weak now.
Compared to before.
Well, yeah, compared to before. Yeah. It's not that they're weak.
Well, they're about...
Full stop.
Well, yes and no. They're basically set probably about 25 to 30%, give or take, over top of the units that could be there at that time. So battle suits now being at 24 when soldiers would be 18 or 20 or somewhere in there. They have an edge, but because they're so expensive to get to, you might actually bypass the affinity and jump straight into, higher level units.
Yeah, you may go from level 4 to level 6.
Yeah, and then therefore, whoops. And not to mention, some of them are just on such weird tech paths that...
There's that too, plus the resource requirements on top of it.
Yeah, although resource requirements for most of the unique units got changed down. The highest amount is 5 now for the ultimate versions versus 7s and 6s to the point where it's like, yeah, why do I want to build one of those when I can build 3 of these and get the same effect? The suggestions on the forums are like, be given a special ability at the base level to make them unique compared to
that
the...
might make it a little more easy to work them in without just making them super strong to the point where rushing them out will cause you to be capable of mowing people down. So that might be the way to go, actually.
Something like the Xenoswarm got their miasma bonus at the base level rather than later on, then they would be useful in miasma. More useful than your soldiers in miasma if you're going harmony. And therefore, yay, I've got a useful unit there. Or the battle suit could get a bonus for defending or something like that. Something that the equivalent units wouldn't get right away. People were also whining that their 40 strength battle suit they used to be able to swing through and take cities and wipe out armies with in volume because it was titanium based rather than floatstone based. They're like, oh, I want that back. Now it's useless. And they build missile destroyers. Like, no, And I want to build 2 units for 1.
It's a combined arms consideration, plus the fact that titanium is much more plentiful on maps as compared to pretty well anything else that was tied to constructing any particular unit, affinity-based or otherwise. It was just ridiculously easy to field so many, and like you said, just walk up beside city. Whomp.
Yep.
Done.
Plus, cities are actually getting improved a little bit better now. I'm not sure if it's in there. It's probably under the AI tuning improvements and tweaks where AIs will build defensive buildings a little bit more than they used to.
Yeah, that's
Crazy.
an inconvenience.
That specific probably falls under the general description, additional AI tuning improvements and tweaks, which is, it doesn't really tell you anything specifically. And I think for Civ fans like us, we're like, care to explain?
Sure.
Yes, could you get into the specifics of said tweaks, please, K-Thanks?
There's stuff in there.
And also under AI, like adjusted AI bonuses on higher difficulty levels. Mm-hmm. Well, you went through with all of the units, you detailed those numbers specifically, including what it was before. So let's be consistent with the detailedness of our patch notes.
You kidding? It's down at the bottom of the patch notes. This is roughly where you get bored. Like, screw that. I'll just put one liner in there.
Notable bug fixes. Embarked workers can now correctly repair pillaged improvements. And I'm thinking you mean they would repair them incorrectly before? Oh, no, I know what they mean, but still, I love the word choice. Fixed bug where victory achievements would only unlock for the first player on a team.
What?
Fixed empty trade requests that could occur during the AI turn.
Mm-hmm. Jerks.
Fix some specific issues with resources not appearing properly in the player stockpile.
Yeah.
Although I'd say from the patch notes, the one that raised the eyebrow the most, because I would like to know more details, and I'm thinking, I'm not quite certain where this came from, and in my mind I'm thinking this is probably a good thing, but gameplay feedback, implemented anonymous gameplay telemetry for design feedback.
Yeah. Sure, why not?
Yeah, you say so.
You could interpret that in several ways. I mean, it sounds good, but is it as good as I think it is? Is it working like I think it is? I like to hear more from Firaxis and 2K about what that means.
It's just using your webcam, Dan. Don't worry about it.
Okay, they're only recording and watching you.
Yeah.
They're not watching the game. They're watching you.
With every breath I take and every move I make?
Yeah. There's already a crash bug feedback loop anyways. Whenever you crash or anything, it sends a report generally, unless your whole system goes down. So they're probably just trying to use that to figure out how people are playing the game.
Mechanic usage statistics.
Yay! No one ever does this. Fine, let's change it. So we're talking about the early game tech order. So Xenotitan, haha, you're funny. You only just made this account for this game. I feel sad.
The Xenotitan, I disapprove of your affinity, but I will defend to the end of turns your right to choose it.
Nah, Harmony's actually pretty solid with Xenotitans. Just not probably with the player. Anyways, he has a thread where he discussed optimal early tech orders and why. His choice, and this is actually a bit of an issue, and I think somebody actually brings it up or a little bit later in the thread, because he starts with chemistry, pioneering, planetary survey, ecology.
Sometimes you need to work in the ability to embark pretty early, depending on your map. So there's some.
If you've got an islands map, you might want to push that up. Yes.
Yeah,
I don't like it. You can start with pioneering if you choose that. So it's sort of like you can talk about tech orders, but you also should say what your build is before you get there, because, if I start with a worker, I really don't need some things early. And if I start with pioneering, I really don't want pioneering in my list. And that also changes orders. He says the order of the last two changes based on map and alien placement. The main reason for chemistry first is because of the recycler and the lab. So production and science first, pioneering for trade. See, I think people have finally figured out pioneering is not for expansion. It's always entirely just for trade. And, of course, planetary survey, he likes that because he wants to get on the water.
I feel like if I can actually defend a second and third city, I want pioneering before chemistry.
No,
assuming I don't start with it.
Well, you can't actually expand without population, and that takes time. So the time that you're researching chemistry and building the lab and the recycler means that you can grow in that period of time. And then you can start kicking it out.
If you're going prosperity, your city 2 is out pretty quickly.
Yeah, but
then you throw an improvement or 3 or 4 on a high yield terrain, your city 3 is out reasonably quickly too. And by then I'd rather be building the trade depot than the lab.
Yeah, but you don't need pioneering to get that first city out.
No, but you can be putting the trade depot up there too faster.
Yeah, I'm with Phil on this one.
Depends on how you take it. You could just go with pioneering as a start, then.
Yeah, that's true. I like the
Faster.
worker.
I know. The worker's solid. I would expect that the math for worker is better than the math for pioneering. Because workers improving tiles right off the mark you can double or triple your output in one improvement, depending on where you start. I still like chemistry then to pioneering, not pioneering first. That just seems weird to me.
Chemistry pretty quickly. It's in, usually next.
Yeah, same here. Pioneering, then chemistry. 'Cause I don't take pioneering to start with either.
I don't think ecology really matters unless you're in a desert. Yes, everybody wants the ultrasonic fence quest to kick off as fast as possible, and so that's one good reason for it.
Yeah, because then we'll prompt the quest that you can reverse the polarity, so your trade routes aren't touched by aliens. Bad touch.
If you are on a land map, you can go to size 3 and then just place all your cities so that all your city trade routes would be protected anyways. But yeah, it just depends on the map. If you're using water-based, then obviously you're going to reverse the polarity, because that's never safe. That's the only reason to go to ecology, unless you start in a desert, in which case you want the vivarium as fast as you possibly can, because deserts that give you food early in the game just kind of breaks it.
I wouldn't do ecology next. I would do physics.
You can't build the observatory without Phyrexite. It requires you to go all the way to robotics to open up Phyrexite. It's one of those buildings that you don't really need until a little bit later.
You're right about the observatory, but physics also gives you the ranger unit, which is very helpful in...
I was going to say, that way you've got the units. You can build a couple so that when you get the affinity, they upgrade automatically.
Yeah. And they cost less, obviously.
Regular aliens you could be shooting at from a distance.
No, don't shoot the aliens.
Yes, shoot the aliens. They're on my lawn.
Absolutely.
Man,
As long as they stay off the lawn,
vary
they're
a
fine.
lot when it comes to the utility of shooting aliens, though, and whether I'd want to put my hammers into more military units this early. Because if I don't have to, I'm not doing it.
Nope.
Trade convoys and cities and workers, not that crap.
Yeah, I will skip military units altogether if I don't have to. It depends on where you start. Like, if you start close to an area, one of the wild zones, or you need to expand into an area with nests, then absolutely you need to get military units. But if you can expand away from that area initially, then it's just better to expand elsewhere.
It seems more common than not you're going to encounter aliens sooner rather than later. So
you can get starts where there's no aliens to bother you. I mean, you might get a couple odd aliens, but they'll just get shot by the city and you can ignore them.
Well, congratulations on your luck skill then.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference between 3 aliens, where you can take them out with a marine you got on your first city or second city, and then there's 4 alien nests, and you're getting swarmed.
There's a big difference.
You might want to start choosing a little differently in those 2 scenarios.
So as for other people's reactions, the very first comment was Alaska, and his second point about chemistry was he constantly reloads until he gets drowned. Okay, we'll skip every other comment that you have. If you're constantly reloading to get something, then your commentary on the forum is worth a lot less than most other people's.
Oh, he's just saying he's safe scumming for a great game. That's kind of like how I feel about the Hall of Fame practice with huts, though.
Yeah, that too.
Or ruins for Civ 5. Unfortunately, the forum does have that kind of incentive towards doing that kind of stuff. So I don't want to come down too hard on someone for making an obvious choice.
But in terms of an early game tech order, that's circumventing the tech.
But no, I would not put a strategy based around safe scumming.
No.
Yes, and this is strategy.
No. And hence why I don't really believe that the HOF is as useful as it is made out to be. Because if you're constantly safe scumming for beneficial maps, then that's why I prefer Game of the Month, because you're handed a map.
Yeah, Game of the Month is really solid too.
The 2014 listener feedback survey for PolyCast, we ran it for 2.5 weeks, up to and including the 3rd of January over at SurveyMonkey. We'll talk about the Turncast results on the next episode. For PolyCast itself, the question that was new this time, the very last question, gave people the opportunity to provide us with feedback that they input into a text field, which I think makes this survey results more interesting because it gives us a little bit more to talk about. To go through just the standard questions, air quote standard questions, We asked people to indicate their episode length preference. Of course, we've been 60 minutes since 2011, and that was the most popular response, followed by 45 minutes, 75 minutes, and then 30 minutes, because those were the choices. So PolyCast episodes will remain 60 minutes in 2015.
Oh, no.
Wait, was that a happy sigh or a sad sigh?
Oh, I'm sad.
You're sad that it's that long, or?
I don't know. Actually, there was only 47 people who answered. It seemed a little less than before.
Yeah, we only had 47 respondents this time, which the last couple of years we had like 75 and 81. And even in the first year we did this in 2011, we had 59. So we've been recording PolyCast episodes every other week since the show began in 2006. So what were people's preferences? Really, it has always come down to, would you like us to go to a weekly format is really what this question boiled down to. And bi-weekly won again. So bi-weekly being every other week, and weekly came in second. That was fine. The third question always makes me giggle. What segment do you feel should be included on the show? And Senate, which is debating game strategies, only had 43 out of 47 respondents. But at least it tied for first this time with Forum Talk, which investigates hot issues raised in Civ community forums. News was in second place, so we covered 2 weeks' worth of news. Then came Interview, Research Lab, Open Mic, of which this is category, and Community Focus, Miscellaneous, Theater, and Time Machine all had less than 50% of responses. Someone could make the argument that, well, if you look at the segments that were included in 2014 and how frequently they occurred, isn't this just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because if you didn't have a particular segment covered, or you didn't cover it as much, then are people really going to get a feel for what's involved? I certainly see that argument, but I just think this goes to show that for the most part, we've done a decent job, although if we can, maybe a bit more Interview and Research Lab this year as compared to last year, because Forum Talk, Senate, and News probably easily covered 2/3 to 3/4 of the topics that we covered at all last year.
Yeah, we used to do a lot more Research Lab now that you mention it. I hadn't really noticed.
It's true, and I think part of that might be because, well, last year there was so much to talk about with regards to Civilization Beyond Earth in particular, but then also Civilization Online and Civilization Revolution 2, and then Firaxicon, and then we're talking about Civilization 5 still, that there was so much to talk about. Because Research Lab, by the way, exploring concepts that are not in Civ yet, but maybe in the future. There was so much in the present. How could we possibly look to the future? There's too much to talk about. How do you rate PolyCast on passion, showing excitement in what is said? The most popular response was 8, excellent, followed 9 at superb. And if I look at an average, by the way, the passion rating was 8.9 out of 10. As for dialogue, connecting with the show's audience, it was a 7.7, which is the highest we've ever actually had, just like passion was as high as it has ever been. So, yay! The most contested result came from the mixed coverage of Civilization 5, Civilization Beyond Earth, and the Civ series in general. The first time in the survey that Civilization 4 specifically was not a choice, replaced by a Civilization Beyond Earth, and Civilization 5 and then Beyond Earth led Civilization Beyond Earth and then Civilization 5 by 14 votes to 12. So to say that we're going to be balancing that coverage as much as possible, it's going to be consistent with what we as a regular panel are playing, guests that come onto the show, feedback that we receive from our listeners, and what's going on in the community is going to ultimately determine that balance. But in my own mind, I'm thinking generally 50-50. That doesn't mean every episode is a 50-50 balance, but that's what it would work out to overall in the season. And if you really don't like one game or the other, use our show notes to cherry pick what topics that you want to listen to. How we promote the show, 94% of you, 44 to 47, said we should be using Civilization community forums. Yay! YouTube was second and Twitter was in third, and none of the other possible choices, the 2K Publisher Forum, Facebook, RSS feeds, Ustream, and that would be Twitch, and Google Plus were all less than 50% of the vote. Now, as for most popular guests, and by that I mean guests that appeared on the show in 2014 that people would like to see return in 2015, congratulations to Alpha Shard. He was in first, and this was the first time that there was not a tie for guests for return appearance. Scott got that in his own right. 60% of people who made a choice said that they would like Scott to return. The Chris D was in second with 49%, and Exius at 46%. It is worth perhaps noting that 25% selected nobody. So 1 in 4 respondents wanted us to get completely different guests. Ouch. Although I kind of have in my mind, I wonder what the percentage would be if I structured the next question. Get rid of all the regular co-hosts.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
What does that say about
Whole
people?
new panel, all 4 of you gone.
Yeah. What does that say about people who are below the don't invite them back? Or like nobody get new guests? Because
Maybe they just don't have like a favorite or something.
I tried to phrase it as people that you would like to see return in the next year. Because you could select as many of the individuals as you wanted on the list.
Yeah.
And when people selected no for all of them,
it's like...
That's true.
Yeah.
You could interpret that as either they didn't like any of the guests or maybe they don't like guests, period. I don't know. I would like to think it's that you just... quote unquote, I would like to think that it was the first of those, but I don't want to think of either of those things, actually. And then, of course, everyone's favorite question, the question that they love to hate or hate to love, favorite regular co-host. And Phil, the Mean Team, you were in first with 32% of the vote.
Yay.
It had been Magin the last 2 seasons, but you were first back in 2011. And for the second year in a row, Mackie, you are in second. 28% of the vote. So congratulations to you two. What do you get?
Nothing.
The acknowledgement that you were first and second. I hope you enjoyed that.
I thought I got 5% more raised than usual.
Yeah.
I thought that's how it worked.
Stop dividing by 0.
That's what I get for not tweeting out the survey.
Not to diminish Phil's victory, but I'm probably going to anyway. It was the closest race ever. Like, Phil in first had 32% of the vote. That was the lowest percentage for first place ever. Mackie's 28% was only slightly less in second than mine was in 2011 when I had 31%. But hey, that just means we're all neck and neck in terms of people being favorites. We're everybody's favorite.
I like it that way, actually. You got a nice close thing. Different people like different of us.
Yeah. It's all good.
Now, the very last question, again, I alluded to, people could type in any response. In other words, is there something you wanted to expand on? Was there something that wasn't covered at all in what it is that we were going to be talking about? And my favorite response out of the 17 people who typed in something was someone typed in PolyCast. And all I could think of is, did they feel they needed to type something in order for the survey to go through? It wasn't a "Are you human?" question.
No.
On the survey, but we had a few comments like, "Love your podcast, great work, keep up the great work, really enjoy listening, thanks for putting in the effort, love anything to do with strategy. PolyCast is great entertainment for any Civ enthusiast. Lots of great topics and many good guests. I'm fond of getting Phyraxians as guests the most. Lastly, I, one crazy Canadian, shall continue to post questions and pose as Dan Q. Cheers." I think I made the joke towards the end of last season that wasn't my double login. Greatly enjoy PolyCast. All of the hosts, the majority of the guests are great. More Senate, please. I would really like to see game strategy be the primary emphasis with the other segments being more secondary. The reason that Senate wasn't so dominant as it might have otherwise been is we had so much news again, and Beyond Earth being released at the end of October really didn't lend itself to a lot of opportunity for strategy. As a person who has listened to all of the shows, I feel that Civilization V has been talked almost to death by this point. However, I have no intention of ceasing to tune in whatever the Civilization topics are exactly, so more Civilization V talk is not a deal breaker for me. We had comparable comments about definitely should still be more Civilization V, no, there should be more Civilization Beyond Earth, and that kind of came out in a wash. Someone said that I would like more talk of previous Civ games, maybe a funny segment on parodies, jokes, or just amusing stories in Civ. So that would be our theater topic where we talk about previous gameplay experiences. And I don't know about my fellow regular co-hosts, but one of the reasons I essentially dropped that is because we end up talking about our previous Civ games.
Yeah, we do. There's no doubt.
Especially when we talk about Senate or even forum talk, as opposed to monologuing a bit about of a story.
Yeah.
But, maybe once a quarter or once every half year, maybe we could say, okay, let's actually talk about previous games from beginning to end and then say how great the stories were or not. It's actually kind of nice to see that people wanted to hear more about our stories specifically. And, of course, most of the stories I remember, I would rather forget because they really tick me off. So I don't know if I want to share that with other people.
You seem to be on the receiving end of a lot of those, though. So you have a lot of good stories.
Plus, there's that whole Turncast thing. So
I was going to say, Turncast kind of different place.
Yeah, I guess if you really want talk of previous Civ games, Turncast is the place to go.
And also, if you want humorous things, Turncast is the place to go.
Yeah.
We're only funny incidentally on PolyCast.
I'm censored slightly less on Turncast, but just slightly.
Just slightly.
Actually, no, that's probably not true. It's probably the opposite.
Another comment. Please place the open mic segments towards the end of the show. It often is disappointing when, excited to have a new episode to listen to, there is 10 minutes talking about some random feedback about the show to wade through at the beginning. I would probably be much more interested in it if it was at the end and I've already had my PolyCast fix. I have no other complaints, though. Keep up the great work. Often open mic does happen at the beginning of the show because we want to highlight listener feedback, seeing as how people who listen to the show took the time to send us some questions or comments, and we want that addressed on the show. But I think this just also goes back to my previous point about show notes, that if you really don't want to listen to that, then you can jump to or jump past wherever the open mic segment to be. So,
it's worth pointing out, though, like, depending on when you're listening, like, say you're driving in to work or something, like one of those 30-plus minute drives, and so, you're just listening to this, maybe here and there, as one of the things you do when you're driving. It wouldn't be that easy to do that.
Yeah.
Or, maybe you're in some other situation where it's less convenient to do that. And I see where he's coming from, because if you're looking for one thing, I don't know, a lot of times you put that at the end. But at the same time, because of the way our topics lists are structured, sometimes we don't get to all of our topics within a show period, because sometimes we just don't know how long we're going to spend on something. And so if you put something like that at the end and then skip it, it gets to the point where it's like, oh yeah, here's feedback from someone who contacted us 6 weeks ago. And that doesn't work out very well either. So that's a tough balance to strike, really. If there's something that's really relevant or so that we really want to cover when it comes to open mic, I don't know if it's better to leave it to the end, even so.
A compromise may perhaps be more that we try more towards the middle of the show, like the halfway point of the show, what we perceive to be the halfway point. So it's not right at the beginning, but it's also not right at the end.
I don't know. That could be jarring, too. I think it just depends. We'll have to feel that out.
I guess it depends on what the feedback is, how much there is, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and how well it ties in with the topic that we're covering, perhaps, too.
That, too.
It would make more sense in the middle of the show if it's, really relevant to one of the topics we're covering anyway.
And there should also be noted that often when a topic gets skipped because we ran out of time, it's probably going to get skipped at least once more. It tends to be that, I would say, when we skip a topic, there's a 50-50 chance that it'll be skipped at least once more, maybe twice more, and then we never discuss it at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be the case of open mic. I would still rather talk about open mic 6 or 8 weeks after the fact as opposed to never. But it does lose the impact, like you were getting at there, Phil, if we wait that long.
And it's just not as good of a connection with the community if we're putting off answering our feedback for any period of time.
Yeah, way too much.
And then there was a related comment. They weren't the only one to say this. Love the show and don't really feel much of anything needs changing. The only thing I'd say is that I personally don't care for addressing fan feedback on the show.
Yeah. None for you.
I just don't find it entertaining, and I'd rather, instead of being told something that is being noted and addressed, see that via actions. Episode 216 comes to mind. Some time spent addressing that Civ 4 wasn't dropped from the podcast and Civ 5 was still being featured. I'd rather that time is filled with content for whatever the email felt was lacking, rather than telling them that it's not. Really not a big gripe, though, just scraping the bottom of the barrel for criticism, but it's the one part I don't find interesting in the slightest, though I'm sure I'd feel differently if I had any gripes I wanted addressing. Which could have been ironic if, I never read this aloud and we never talked about it.
Let's just not talk about your stuff.
The longest one is this one. It says, I hope this survey will help. It seems like you take a shotgun approach to the show, which can appeal mildly to a lot of people and get them to listen for the little nugget that they're looking for. I typically find about 5 minutes of content per show that appeals to me. It feels like there's a lot of fluff for a podcast that says it's strategy focused. I'm not trying to attack you all. I just like to hear more focused strategy talk about BE. Maybe explain things a little more from step 1 to 10 instead of talking about step 6 only and saying, more trade roads, please, or something of that nature. It doesn't have to be dry or elementary, but maybe touch on the basics of where you're coming from in the case the listener isn't on the same page. It can take a long time to search the forums to find a simple detail that you might have missed along the line. In short, less vague, more specific and detailed for BE, please. I've played more hours of Civ than I like to admit, yet I still want more detail from experienced players as we all have different experiences with the game. Thank you. Probably one of the strongest worded criticisms, but still it was direct and it was civil, and I think that comes down to with BE, now that the game's been out a few months, there's some strategy to talk about. Plus the fact that, hey, we just had a very substantial patch, which we knew was coming for a little while and was set to change what it was we were talking about in terms of strategy anyway.
And we'll get there, too, as the game matures a little bit, and it isn't just, as long as you make a bunch of trade routes, you're going to win type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
This one made me smile a little bit, because there were very few that mentioned any of us individually specifically, but this one did. Maca Lewis should be louder, angrier, and have access to a time machine.
I don't know about that last one.
It is 2015. It should be showing up in Hill Valley anytime now, right? Right?
You might have misdialed one of the numbers.
Also, do not abandon Civilization Beyond Earth. I have no idea how 2K4X decide how much effort they want to put into a game before moving on to the next one, but people on the board seem pessimistic or happy it might not last, and thus may just put it in last for coverage. I enjoy it and would like it more if improved with patches and an expansion. If the perception that people are still interested in the game is a factor and having a podcast talk about gives that impression, then I do want the game talked about. Yes, we will continue talking about Civilization Beyond Earth. And speaking of Civ titles, even though it's getting to be a pretty old game, there are many Civ fans out there who think that Civ 4 is the best in the series and play it rather than Civ 5, so I would request more Civ 4 content. And also would like to see more focus on Civ 4, given it is generally regarded as the best in the series.
It's also much older.
It carries weight. Yeah,
it carries weight
in terms of design balance, it's still the best. That's my personal opinion. I know not everyone agrees with it, but the problem with covering it heavily on the show now is that there's not going to be a lot of news there. Yeah. And while there may occasionally be some strategy changes to what the best players are doing, that's not going to happen very often because the game has been explored really heavily and there's nothing changing it. So we can cover it, but a lot of times it's just not going to be anything we haven't said before, which is why you're not going to see a lot of it.
Plus, much as Civ 4 is still considered best, and there are still some people playing it. Let's see, if I go to Civ 4...
It probably doesn't have the numbers, but I think that's almost besides the point when it comes to a show coverage standpoint, because if you just look at, okay, what percentage of players are playing this right now, and try to line up topic lists proportionately, we probably technically didn't cover Civ 4 as much as it would have in theory. But it's just there needs to be something to talk about too that we haven't said on episodes 50 plus episodes back, and really hasn't changed since then.
That's the reason, yeah.
I mean, the most part, it would be mods. And if there are still people building mods for Civ 4, then the best place to talk about that is Modcast anyways.
Yeah,
exactly.
Podcast itself never put a heavy emphasis on mods.
Because I know there's still people playing Civ Rev, but that doesn't mean that we talk about it.
And that would be Revcast.
Yeah, that too. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things of, it is an older game, and there's definitely far more people playing Beyond Earth and Civ 5 than there are Civ 4 at this point.
Yeah, and I love that game. I put thousands of hours into that game, but right now I play Beyond Earth more. That's just how it goes.
If there was a substantial new revelation on something we hadn't talked about before, or some radical change to something that we had talked about because at this point someone discovered something that no one else had discovered, then that would be worthwhile and we would come back to it. But that's so few and far between. I think the probability is so low. It's unlikely that we would have another Civilization 4 topic specific in the future. I would never exclude it, but have to remember that for the first 4.5 seasons, the only title we talked about, and by only I mean 98% plus, was Civilization 4. Whereas once we started talking about Civilization 5, it was still Civilization 4 coverage too, and even Civilization 4 predominantly over Civ 5 for a while. And now Civilization 5 coverage is also being quote-unquote balanced with Civilization Beyond Earth. So Civ 4 had our all but complete and undivided attention for 4.5 years, which means I think we have comprehensively covered that, such as we can cover on an audio show, because there are some topics that just lend itself better to being able to read over video.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about stuff, if we look at Steam, I know Civ 4 is not great for Steam playlists and stuff, but of the current players right now, Civ 5's on the list for the top 10, and Civ 4 is not. Also, Beyond Earth is not, but that's probably something different.
I just thought you wouldn't mention Beyond Earth at all when you were saying
yeah, I just said ignoring it.
If you didn't say that, I would have asked, though.
Don't Starve Together beta is higher than Beyond Earth at the moment.
All right, PolyCast will now start covering... No, we're not.
Oh, man.
Let's see. PolyCast continues to provide excellent coverage of all things Civ. I always learn from listening to the podcast, and I feel that PolyCast provides a great overview of the Civ community and addresses topics in the community in a thoughtful, passionate, and balanced way. Aww. I would like to see the addition of storytelling and role-playing added to the regular circuit of topics. Many Civ players like to role-play their Civs as they play, and I'd like to see some of their stories featured on the PolyCast. More general to the last, showcasing some of the more creative elements of the community would be interesting to see. The PolyCast is pretty good at casting a wide net and seeking out diverse parts of the Civ community that may not be part of the mainstream community on forums, but I think it could do a better job at seeking out fringe parts of the community and facilitating interactions with those elements, marketing to those elements, and bringing them into the fold. So perhaps something that could be covered under interview or even community focus, which we had done of 2014, which is where we highlight a specific section of the Civ community. So we'll certainly keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And two final comments. The second last one. Continued production of this podcast is desired, preferred, and otherwise wanted. All hosts are great. All people involved, mostly, are good.
Hey, wait a minute.
I think when they say all people involved mostly are good, I think by all hosts are great, I think they mean regular co-hosts, or they could mean all guest co-hosts are great, and we regular co-hosts are mostly good. I don't know. There should be more disagreements for more lively banter.
Sure.
No.
Yes, there should be more disagreements.
Oh, you see what we did there?
I'll see what I can do.
More non-contrived disagreements. Oh,
yes,
we really need to be more specific. Also, more mom jokes from Mad Jin, dad jokes from Dan, troll jokes from me and team, and all jokes from Mackie. Most importantly, we need more joke threads and less crap from Facebook and the official 2K people, since they're obviously too first-person shooter to know what turn-based strategy is. Happy New Year. Wow!
Oh.
It is true, though. Just kind of...
Strategy games are not contemporary. No, excuse me. I don't know where that came from.
They are contemporary.
Oh, man, I'd almost forgotten about that, too. You had to go and say that again.
Christoph Hartmann, 2K president. We will never forget.
We shall never forget.
And related to that, and the final comment, I just had to include this at the end. More Mad Jin and Dan back and forth.
What?
Now that just sounds hot.
That just sounds weird.
Jeez. Oh, that's just put horrible thoughts in my head. Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
Call in today.
In North America, the number is 301-637-7659.
That's 301-637-POLY.
In Europe, 44121-288-7659. That's 44121-288-POLY.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
For more information on PolyCast,
Our sibling shows Modcast, Revcast, and Turncast,
or about PolyCast in general,
Log on to the series' official website at
polycast.net.
thepolycast.net.
usually wind up getting something incidentally, if nothing else. But
Yeah, it also depends on some of the quests. Like, some of the quests are easier to fulfill if you go off affinity than they are if you go on the same affinity you're trying.
yeah.
One of the first quests is like, if I go Harmony on this quest, all I have to do is beat your station up, and then I get Harmony. If I go Purity or Supremacy, I have to wait till deeper in the tech tree and basically adding 40 or 50 turns to the plan before I can fulfill this quest. Yeah, I think I'm just going to destroy you. Leaving now. Bye, everybody.
That's not how you do closing.
Yep.
At least
Okay.
the guest co-hosts have an excuse.
What? See, that's why we have guest co-hosts, so we don't have to do this sort of crap.
Well then.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, this has been PolyCast episode 219. I am Mad Jin, and leaving here, joined by throwing words out there. Awesome. Makalua.
Wow, I am a professional compared to you. Dang.
The mean team.
I welcome you to the new year, my new vassals.
And the Dan.
Stats forever.
What?
Oh, right. I'm doing that. Right. Sure. So, welcome to Wait, what episode? You're right. Okay.
Yeah, you put that on the
Guys, in case you're worried, we're
And
professional.
today we're joined by guest co-host.
Derp.
You know what else is weird? The fact that the health effects balancing was put under the covert ops heading in the balance notes.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of hidden message there? Because I went looking through, where's the health stuff? Where's the health stuff? Oh, there's the health. What?
It's not under the covert ops heading.
It is. I said fanatics. It's like covert ops, and then from negative 20 to 70.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay. I'm looking at the other one, and it's not. So.
Speaking of standard and help, our first Senate topic of our 9th season.
What?
Wow. That's craziness.
Where's your mom? What?
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 It doesn't always have to make sense, but Imagine gets us to stop and think about it, so therefore he wins. Always.
Always. Anyways, moving on. Random non sequiturs.
Yeah, I wasn't that non sequitur before, but now I got really a non sequitur. I was still on the topic of early tax for a while.
Mackie will save us again.
Ooh. Here I come. Wait.
That doesn't. Right?
Sounded a little too happy about that there, but
Oh, that would explain it. I didn't tell anybody about it.
well, it's true you did not tweet it like you did last year.
See, that was my mistake. Forgot to tweet it.
And you can probably blame yourself for not winning a certain question then as a result. We'll get to that. And you might say, and why is my phone ringing in the middle of this conversation? That's not very nice. Okay, and they decided not to talk to me because they...
Who's going first?
That would be you, because you're famous.
That would be you because it says Mackie.
I didn't know if he was just going to jump in or not.
The way to play Shoshone is to forward settle near Dan and then build up as much military as possible so he can't do anything about it and keep
You
forward
build a bunch of
settling.
Pathfinders, send them to all the ruins. They can all become composite bows and conquer the world by turn 50. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, that too. But the mandatory step is to forward settle near Dan.
Fortunately, I'm not the only Dan on the planet, so there is some leeway.
Yeah.
Sometime between January 15th and January 30th, 2015, nominate PolyCast in the 2015 PolyCast Awards over at podcastawards.com.
Whoa, wait a minute. Did you say the 2015 PolyCast Awards?
I said Podcast Awards.
I'm sure you said PolyCast Awards.
gosh.
Okay, well, from...
Please.
Mackie. This is Mackie's part.
What?
Mackie, you have another line.
Oh, well, you posted so many things and it didn't scroll down all the way. I'm sorry.
Well, it is PolyCast after dark on occasion.
Usually after dark.
Surprisingly.
Imagine that. I mean, the person that said they were one crazy Canadian, anybody could type that they were one crazy Canadian.
That's true.
Yeah, anybody.
So we really don't know, but no, and I don't really know one crazy Canadian, but
I know lots of them.
I know at least two.
Please add a comment to help the PCA's review team understand why PolyCast is deserving to be nominated in these categories.
I think you said help the PC's review team, not the
PCA.
PCA's review
I
team.
thought I said that.
No, I'm afraid not. Poor Mackie needs more coffee or stronger coffee or both. I don't know.
Although this is amusing, to be fair.
I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to say it.
I was thinking about it too.
And Mackie's sigh sounded a lot happier this time than it did last time.
That's kind of like I was just waiting. Who's going to say it? Who's going to say it? Please add a comment to help the PCA's review team understand why PolyCast is deserving to be nominated in these categories.
Mackie, I think you forgot. No, actually, that was fine this time.
Hey, Tian, I'm giving you a Trudeau salute right about now.
Record date January 10th, 2015. Civilization 4, 5, and Beyond Earth sound clips copyright Take-Two Interactive. Copyright Civilized Communication at civcom.net.